Hello everyone. I do apologise for the lateness of the stream. Should have been 18 minutes ago. However, I had technical difficulties which are now resolved. Welcome. Hello everyone. And I must say, some of these Victoria 2 soundtracks actually make brilliant introduction music. So maybe I'll use that in videos more often, who knows. So welcome everyone back to the Victoria 3 discussion show, panel, thing. It has been about a month, 3 weeks since we last did one. I think it's a month exactly because of the 4 Dev Diary, 4 months, yeah. So we have many Dev Diaries to discuss. We will take the most important features, points and dev responses, for example, for each of these 4 Dev Diaries, one of which just came out over an hour ago. I'm joined by my co-host Piechucker. We'll introduce the panel actually in a second. Let me get the background music. We're just, going straight into it in a second. Let's see. Anything else to say? No, not really. Let me just go into this.
True in that.
Alright, shut up, I'm back. Sorry. The thing actually worked now, so hello to the panel. Piechucker, it's been ages since you were on one of these. Welcome back.
Yes, thank you very much. G'day everyone.
Just to qualify, he is not an expert, he's my co-host.
I'm not at all an expert yet.
No, so, and then we have ZombieFreak, who's a regular. Hello.
Hello.
The one who actually does the research, which is why we have him here. He's read all the Q&As, he's read all the Dev Diaries and the responses, which I have, but not the responses. Anyway, and RedKing, welcome back.
Hello!
We like to get you here because as well as having the typical Victoria 2 CV, you also are one of the hopeful people who we need to balance the stream.
Woohoo. Yeah, I'm happy to be here as devil's advocate.
Great, so that's not the only reason, but anyway, Pierre, you're the special guest because of the Flags Dev Diary.
Yes, I am.
Now, I thought this was the least controversial Dev Diary, but then you raised a mistake with it, but we'll get to that when we actually reach that Dev Diary. But yeah, you also have the typical Victoria 2 expert, modder, game host, experienced player, blah blah blah, all those.
Yeah.
Right. So, I want to try and I was thinking I should try and direct the discussion more to get us through things quicker. Let me turn the background music down a bit. Because we tend to go off on tangents and everything, and I was thinking maybe we should direct it, especially because we have multiple Dev Diaries to get through. I'll try that, but it might not work. So anyway, the first Dev Diary that we're going to discuss is number 25, The Cost of War. And this was an interesting one. This was the 4th, or was it the 4th, whatever, the last one of the series about war. And I like the way they kind of arranged it. So they did the diplomatic plays one to start a war, all the war Dev Diaries, and then the one after that's about peace. So they kind of went through a war. Some might say a war with the Victoria 2 community. So we've sort of done that process. I like it. Anyway, The Cost of War, this one is about exactly what it says. Okay, let's start. The Zombie, what's this one all about?
I mean, it's about, well, as it says, the cost of war. It explains both the monetary cost, the people cost, and also the what do you call it, the economical cost, where that's kind of related to both of them. So the important thing to notice here is that some of these, like in Victoria 2, you also actually did have a cost of war, but they've kind of tried to flesh it out a little bit, which is probably one of the few things that I actually do like about it. So they have added this thing called army laws. So if you played HPM or any of those mods, you probably know how they're going to work. So basically in Victoria 2 in mod, you usually have like a reform, typically a political reform, where you can choose, first by requirement, 4-year draft, 3-year draft, yada yada yada, and you get a certain mob size modifier. They've basically taken that and put it into Victoria 3, although with some slight qualms to it.
Are you referring to the peasant levy, national militia, these ones?
Yeah,
on
yeah.
the
I'm
screen?
referring to all those, the conscript
Yeah.
laws. So you have you have peasant levy, which is basically full mob, national militia, which is also almost full mob, then mass conscription, which is like a mix of them, and regular army is like the professional army is like the most important one. Something that's really interesting though, and I'm not sure how this is actually going to work, especially in multiplayer, but then they actually specify in the dev responses that the national militia law, it means that each single strategic regions raise their armies separately, and they actually won't fight for each other. So like, let's say you have France, right, and you're fighting Prussia. If you use national militia, only the mobos in North France will actually fight the Germans, because the mobs in South France aren't actually considered to be, they're not invading their land, thus they don't have to fight it.
Well, that's strange.
That is strange, and that's something I noticed. That it sounds really strange, especially for
Well, it sounds like it's
Paradox
meant
game.
for like confederations, like say like Argentina back in the day, to defend against like foreign
Decentralized.
European.
Yeah, decentralized.
Yeah, decentralized. That's a good way of
Yeah.
putting it.
I'm not sure. Like, I mean, it's a neat option, right? But I feel like it's lack of control in a system that already has lack of control. We talked about this earlier with the war and stuff. I feel like there's not really much reason to pick this, like more of a balance issue. But I mean, we don't know
Yeah.
exactly how.
Why
it's
would you
gonna work.
pick it?
Yeah, why would you
Control
pick it?
everything.
You can't even use all your units, in war, because like they're split up in strategic regions. Like, I suppose if your entire country is one single strategic region, it might be worth it. But aside from that, it
Well,
can't really
also
see
it
beyond.
looks like it might be a thing that this is like an early game thing, where like you have a choice at early game, where if you're not like if you're actually like decently advanced and you're actually at the edge of technology, you'll have a choice between either having a national militia or a regular army.
Yeah. So
The
basically,
regular army's
I
like,
just
super
look at
expensive.
these and I see you just want a regular army. That's it.
Yeah.
You just want
Like,
that.
well, actually, that depends, because if you look in the actual screenshot, I don't know if you can see it, but the screenshot of all
The one under this one.
Yeah. So it actually says that you can actually get more mob size from the other ones. Now, national militia seems pretty shit, because you can't actually, use the armies that are close. But something like, regular armies, or not regular, but like mass conscription, I mean, seems like a better option, because you get to both get all the mobos and have like an actual army. But that might be a late game thing, as RedKing said. That might be meant for like after 1880s and stuff like that. It's not
I'm
possible.
looking
Yeah,
at this
it
screenshot.
says on the-
Doesn't make any sense to me. This screenshot. What
It's
is
yeah,
even
because it
going
says
on?
you need to take nationalism. It says you need, so you
Yeah.
actually can't use it. So it almost seems like a tiered system, like you can only select these objectively kind of better ones if you have a certain tech, which seems a bit odd, compared to Vic 2, that some mob laws are inherently worse than others. But well, I mean, they are inherently worse, but that's how it looks like. We don't have that much information, but just judge from the screenshots and all the information. Seems to be a tiered system. I mean, why would you use national militia when you can get mass conscription, right?
No, this.
Why would you-
Right.
You were going to say something, RedKing, just before I move on.
It was mainly just that, yeah, exactly, kind of like Zombie was saying, that it looks to me like it's trying to be a trade-off thing here, where national militia, I'm sure the amount that's actually like mobilized might be enough to actually resist someone who's trying to invade you with a regular army. Like, it's all down to the balancing, really, basically, and we have no idea for sure about that is the problem. But yeah.
Yeah. So, well, we need to. What we need to do is structure this and move on quickly. So
Yeah.
we've
Right.
talked about that bit. Now the next bit, what is this? Just about getting your like conscripting and stuff like that. How do you get men in your army? That sort of thing. Is there anything interesting in this section?
I mean, the most interesting thing really is just that you can mobilize individual states. So you can mobilize your shitty states if you want to get rid of the people there.
Yeah,
if
we
you
knew
told-
that.
like, you
They
can-
they told us about that, and we knew that
Yeah.
from like the War Dev Diaries.
Yeah,
Really.
so not that interesting really. Don't like.
Speaking of the War Dev, Pierre, did you read any of those ones back before about the war? What did you think of the whole war microing stuff? Just quickly.
When they took away units and stuff.
Yeah,
like that.
yeah.
Obviously I hated it. Being Victoria 2 playing, like even playing Hearts of Iron, that's the main fun of the game, really. But I see they're trying to simplify it and as stuff, and I actually don't mind it, because I'm thinking like Victoria 2 and Victoria 3 are supposed to be two different games anyway. So it's not a big deal, but yeah, I mean that's just my opinion.
Yeah.
Really.
Oh, we'll see. We'll see.
So the interesting thing about that, I'll just mention this quickly, is I actually made a point earlier before the stream started that if they had made this game and they didn't call it Victoria, I don't think anyone would have a problem with it. But because with the Victoria brand name, there's like a expectation that there's a proper war system. Like Victoria 1 had a proper war system with units, Victoria 2 had it. So it's kind of assumed that people would get annoyed that Victoria 3 wouldn't have it, right? Just a quick point.
Yeah, I suppose that's not the main reason why it might be bad, but it is one. I mean, you can. We've covered this mostly already. I just wanted to get Pierre's quick thoughts since he hasn't been here before.
Yeah, I mean, because really, like Victoria, I mean, in my opinion, Victoria 2 is like pretty much perfect, aside from the whole like multiplayer issues and stuff.
Yeah.
So I don't see a big reason to really like have a sequel to it. So I think it's totally fine them having a totally different game essentially.
I have even more to say on it, but we have to stick to this.
Yeah.
What we're going to do next. This bit down here, right? When I saw this screenshot here about this is like making some buildings and stuff. This is like, what game does this remind you of, guys?
Which screenshot are you on right now? Like the barracks one?
Conscription center with all the provinces highlighted.
Oh, yes.
What does this remind you of?
Clash of Kings?
No, EU4.
It looks
EU4.
like yeah,
Making buildings in EU4.
It does actually, yeah, it does.
One of the sad things about this screenshot is it shows the provinces and how they've drastically increased the amount of provinces, and it's sad because they're doing nothing with those provinces, i.e. having wars, having men to micro and fight battles in them.
I agree. Like they didn't, because they actually said they would use province for military maneuvering, and this actually makes me wonder if they envision a different system, because why do you need individual provinces to maneuver in if there's no maneuvering from the player? You might as well just have it like in Total War, where there's no real province, it's just like a land area that you control, right? That's not really any point.
I think it's entirely aesthetic, and that sort of, you see a little bit more about that later.
Yeah.
The cynic in me says that they're probably in a DLC going to actually let you have some control over your generals in the future.
The micro DLC.
They did. They alluded. That was an ominous allusion. They alluded to that. This whole dev diary though, this is like buildings about conscripting your units, which is part of the cost of war, isn't it, Piechucker?
Yep.
I was trying to get away with you to join the discussion there by asking some weird, vague question. What are your thoughts? I'm bad at this, aren't I?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not. I'm not entirely. I don't know. I've already said everything I had to say on war. I mean, this is obviously a bit different, but it's still the main problem. I had something to say, which I thought further down in the dev diary, and I'll touch on this when we get there. The devastation mechanics.
Well, that's exactly what I was about to move on to, because for me that's the most important part of this dev diary.
I think that's awesome. I think that's so cool.
The stuff here about convoy raiding, we can go past that.
Yeah.
What I'm in this for, there's more production methods. That's not that interesting. Medical aid can help you. What I wanted to get to was devastation, because I found that important. I'll just... Yeah. Well, you can start us off on devastation. Devastate us, Piechucker.
All right. I think like Zombie was saying, with this is probably the use of the new provinces is this aesthetic change on the map. But I think that's awesome, just seeing artillery holes and things like that on the actual map. And it does seem to be similar in vision to the devastation mechanics in Europa, which I thought, when I first saw it, I thought that was a bit sus, but reading about it seems alright.
Right, I want to say, on devastation, this is an interesting thing.
Yes.
Now, what it introduces, which was not in Victoria 2, was the impact of a battle being fought in a province impacts the province. This was absolutely not the case in Victoria 2, to almost a ludicrous degree. You could have a battle going on for 10 years in a province, which was not occupied yet, and absolutely nothing would happen to the province. It would just be normal, because it hasn't been occupied, and only occupation affects a province in war directly. So this devastation on the map, which I don't think it looks very good. I mean, it's just like a weird grey texturing, but this is a work in progress. I'll give them that. It affects the province when a battle is being fought in it.
Yeah,
That's good.
Yeah.
That's a good idea.
That is actually a very good point. Yeah, it's just the fact that this actually allows more player expression because, you might be able to fight an offensive war in your enemy's country and are able to devastate their landscape, which would make it hard for them to economically recover compared to you. Which is how some nations actually tried to plan their military maneuvers back in the 1800s.
Yeah.
But yeah, like the American Civil War going down there, burning everything, something like
Right.
that.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Which was something they'll add in a DLC.
I kind of would have wished it was a little more in depth though, because it seems like pretty simple. Like there's a percentage modifier, the modifier does stuff. It doesn't seem like that different from a province modifier in V2. Just the province modifier is scalable and it gets put in a province under the condition that there's a battle. But as an idea, I do like it. I just wish they would have perhaps put a little more. But I understand why they want to gloss over this, like kind of like because it's probably a pain in the ass to like if things actually get destroyed and you have to rebuild them, that would just be a pain in the ass. So I can understand why.
And what this comes back to, though, the downside of this whole thing, I praise the devastation system, is that what is the point of it in the war system where you can't even select your armies, choose where you move, where you can't choose where you even fight the battles? What's the point? It's a good system under a Victoria 2 military system.
If you could choose to fight in the capital is devastated, that would be cool. But you can't actually choose that, so you just have to say, well.
I mean, look at this is Romania, right? Presumably, it's Hungarians who came in and did this to Bucharest. So, I don't know.
Also, looking at the daily change as well. That's gonna last some time. I mean, that seems to be quite brutal with the throughput. That's devastation does seem to be quite devastating.
Yeah, it looks like a sort of localized war.
Another really good reason for this is like localized war exhaustion. In Victoria 2, war exhaustion takes place over your whole country. It affects your entire country. And hypothetically, a country could be fighting a war. One part of the country might not even experience any of it. Why would the war exhaustion affect that? Like a distant part, for example. Maybe that's another good reason why we have this as an idea.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea. I think for like the replacement for national war exhaustion, they kind of have that with war support, but we'll get into that later. It's sort of kind of the same, but not really. But
I'm too tired of people talking like they matter when they don't have a fleet.
So just go
Please carry for this game.
To where we were here. I think that's about it for devastation. That is something that's interesting. Where was I? Right here. Now the next bit in this dev diary that was interesting and relevant was the attrition and the effect on your armies. And there was one part in particular. Someone tell me about their attrition and stuff.
Oh, I actually really don't like that because I read that. Let me see if I can find it. Okay, I can't find it, but I'm just gonna go over what I read. Okay, so basically, when you mobilize, there is a certain percentage, which the base value was 20%, that any brigade or any battalion under a general individually is gonna take like 5 to 15% of their strength damage in one tick, right? So like if we compare this to Victoria 2, where it's like maybe a base 2%, or it's increased to 5% if you have a lot of troops in there, yada yada yada. It's like a set percentage that isn't randomized, right? But for some reason they kind of took that and made it randomized based on a 20% roll to take a lot of damage. And I really don't see the reason to do this. I feel like a better system would just been kept Victoria 2 system, but amp it up to like if you mobilize in this weird war system, the simplified war system, you just take 2% or 5%, how many match attrition is affected based on the factors instead of a percentage chance to take a lot of damage. Does that make sense? I'm gonna see if I can find the comment, but
was this from a dev comment about their system for how much attrition you take like that?
It must have been a dev comment somewhere.
So I don't think it's not on the diary, that bit you just mentioned.
Oh. Maybe it's
the
my
Q&A. No, was it in like the
Q&A of
responses?
the dev diary? It could easily be in there.
Yeah.
So this is I fucking wrote in my notes attrition, but they don't call it that necessarily. This is more like their general cost of war on human life, on your armies. The key sentence about the direction for me is: many men fall in battle, of course, but more commonly they perish on their way to the battle or after the battle. I think in real life, in history, in war, this is true. For a game, this is not fun. That's what I think about this.
Yeah, I actually don't think it's that bad. right? I think if it's something you can control, if it's something you can sort of take, let's say it's like it's a base thing where it's like if your army's gonna take this damage and everybody gets that, unless you invest resources into this new medical system, then you take less damage. I wouldn't mind that because everyone has a level playing field, right? What I just don't like is that it's random.
Well, I think that's going to be most of the war mechanics, isn't it? Is like getting shit to the front lines and then supplying. So I think probably attrition's one of the main hands-on thing you can do because you can focus on supplying your units, supplying your fronts.
Hopefully.
This will be the game.
Yeah, and it's just like, you know, they're emphasizing that soldiers die of disease and that in the game more than they do in the battles themselves. And that's just, I don't know. I mean, is that going to be a fun and engaging experience to just have all your men die of disease before you even get to fight a battle?
I think that might be the point here, is they kind of want to discourage war. Is the thing.
That's what I mean. That's what they want to do. That's the direction they're going, and it might be right historically in real life, but not for a game. That's what I'm saying.
I mean, if there's no Marco anyway, I don't think it matters as much, honestly. If they're dying in battles or, you know, because they're taking away the gameplay anyway, so I don't think there's, you know, have much of an impact as they would if you were actually micro in battles.
Yeah, I guess for the direction of the game in general. I'm comparing it to Victoria 2 all the time, which is probably, I don't know. So I mean, in Victoria 2 you care about your armies. You don't.
In a Vic 2 system, this would be, you know, a catastrophic. Whereas, yeah, I think that was that you, Pierre?
Yeah.
Pierre's right in that in this more abstracted system with the front lines, I'm not sure you're going to care that much how much men actually make it to your front, as long as it's enough.
Like what I think of whenever they talk about this stuff, like the cost of war, what comes into my head all the time is the Crimean War. The British experience of that was one where they were terribly supplied. A lot of them had disease, like they transported, you know, bad logistics. And this was the British Empire at the height of its power. And that's what happened in the Crimean War to them. The biggest empire in the world fighting a war at their peak. And they had all that problems. I don't know what point I'm even getting that there, but it's like it's sort of expected to happen in Victoria 3. No matter how well you supply the logistics, because it always will happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I personally don't mind it if the base value is low, is what I'm saying. Like, it makes sense if you will die, but it should be within your control, I agree. It shouldn't just be like, oh, like, you rolled badly and you don't have medical, so yes, like half your army just died to attrition. You buy kind of thing. Like, I don't like that at all. I will agree.
Yeah. When we're playing these games, we don't like to see our numbers go down. We don't like to see our soldiers die. But if they die gloriously in a battle, you're kind of happy with that. Because I'm talking about a game here, not a horrible realities of war simulator. But anyway, I think it's time to move on from that. And we're at the end of this dev diary. So what I want to say is there anything interesting from the dev comments about this that raised any new information?
To be honest, not really. Like, they most just, aside from the national militia thing that I mentioned, that they will defend their homes and they won't actually help you anywhere else, that's in the dev comments. But aside from that, there's not really that much interesting else. Like, I looked through it, and like most of it is just stuff you already know from the screenshots, and or something we can easily, you know, figure out ourselves, kind of. So
yeah, a lot of the stuff is more about, you know, the buildings and the laws, which are two aspects where we know what's going on there really, and I don't really want to spend too much time discussing their laws and their buildings, because that's just sort of, we discussed that earlier in the earlier dev dives when they laid those systems out.
There's one thing that I thought would be interesting, especially from a multiplayer perspective, is that they actually say they don't have a system right now for preventing your strategic industries from actually not, because so when you mobilize, right, it takes workers from the industries and then puts them into into the conscription centers where they become conscripts, and then it does this via kind of a weird system that they explain, but that's not too important. Basically, they say that right now they don't actually have a system from preventing your strategic industries, like, you know, arms production and so on, to get conscripted first. They say they might implement it later. So it's just an interesting thing is that they don't actually have that yet. Hopefully they will. Because if you can't actually exempt certain industries, that would be pretty shit. That's just all I wanted. That's an interesting thing they mentioned. They said they didn't have yet. So,
Is there anything else interesting about this dev diary or any of the comments anyone wants to bring up before we move on to the next one?
I don't think so.
I had a look through the comments. Yeah, no, I'd probably go ahead and move on.
Anyone in the chat who has anything, you can do a subscription message or a donation. We'll talk about them at the end with the Piechucker and me segment. Right, yeah. The next dev diary is number 26, Peace Deals. This was the one right after the ones about war, and as I said, they followed it in a war in a sort of chronological order. This is them piecing out of the war, and it goes into details on war support, mixed peace deals, that sort of thing, and still quite controversial, right?
Yeah, very much so.
Yeah. So, who shall start us off on this one? Who wants to?
I'm looking forward to someone starting us off because I'm still wrapping my head around it.
Well, I mean, I can do that because I think I have a pretty decent understanding of all
Zombie's
this.
the one that does the research. Of course he should start it. Go on, Zombie.
Yeah, alright. So you basically have, so in Victoria 2, you basically only either white peace, surrender, or, or not, or, well, demand peace. So here how it works is we basically have capitulating and negotiating. So, in Victoria 2, you can get quote-unquote capitulated, or aka force peace, if a taker reaches 100%, or if you get full occupied. But here, it's a lot easier. So they have this new thing called war support, right? It's a modifier. It starts at 200 when the war starts, and it drops over the duration of the war. If it reaches 100%, or minus 100%, I mean, you will instantly peace out of the war for all the war goals that are added. So this, I really don't like this, but I'll get onto that later. First, I need to understand how it works. If war support is affected by a bunch of different factors, like the war goal occupied, the amount of pops dying, yada yada. It's basically war. It's kind of like war exhaustion. Like you can think of it as war exhaustion because it comes from like the same place, kind of, as in Vic 2. And it also can't drop below 100, below 0, if either you don't control any of the tickers, or war goals rather, or you occupy that capital. So, basically, the reason why I don't like this, other people can argue against this later, but it's because it takes a lot of agency away from the player. Like, they actually came with an example in the dev comments that's quite humorous. Let me try to find it.
That is exactly what I thought when I read this. It puts things that I think at least in multiplayer, all this would be decided by the player, i.e. how long they want to continue a war, and that's it's in the player's hands, but this is putting it in the hands of modifiers and mechanics.
Yep.
Which obviously I disagree with.
Okay.
For single player, sure, I suppose.
Yeah,
it's fine.
I can easily see this getting modded out immediately in an MP mod because it just does not seem.
I wanted to make a stupid ironic GIF of someone intensely typing on the keyboard. Victoria 2 players immediately modding out Victoria 3 to make it like Victoria 2 as soon as it comes out.
Yeah, this thing you actually couldn't mod it out probably, but just increasing the medium modifier at least. So, anyway, so I want to elaborate. So they have a dev comment that I want to comment on because it's really spicy. Okay, I'm gonna read it out.
Right.
So. Someone asked the question, with this system, it seems that if I have a war goal to take inconsequential island and I conquer the entirety of the British Empire except the capital and that particular island, Britain still wouldn't capitulate. And then the dev says, this is correct, though I would say that this would amount to pretty extreme level of mismanagement on your part.
And this question was asked by Sigma2718.
Yep. Oh yeah, I wonder where he came from. I wonder.
Maybe the Spud Gun Discord.
Yeah, maybe. Anyway, so this is kind of a ridiculous thing because, we have to ask ourselves, by capitulate, does he mean that the AI would peace out for all the war goals? Like, just send a peace over they accept? Or do they mean that you would get force peaced out? Because I actually don't think that you should get force peaced out ever unless you get full occupied. That's actually my opinion, because I think the way that you solve this is through the AI accepting peace deals, right? Either through the AI accepting peace deal that when they think they've lost a war, or giving huge negative modifiers to the enemy if they reject a peace offer that's benefit, like stab hits, but like not as shitty as the actual stab hits in Vic 2. So this I really don't like because it just sounds ridiculous. Like, why wouldn't they capitulate or peace out if
Yeah.
they
So I
block
think
conflict.
what this question is trying to do is to take what the dev diary says and take it to its logical conclusion.
Yep.
And what I'm surprised by is how the developer responds by saying, "Yes, this extreme
Yeah.
scenario will actually happen,"
Yep.
instead of
It-
saying, "Nah, we'll come up with other modifiers which may make it more reasonable." Like,
Yeah. I feel like
Well-
this system takes an extreme amount, in my opinion, an extreme amount of agency away from the player. In Victoria 2, it's pretty rare you would actually get forced peace. I can't really count that many wars that's been forced peace compared to the ones that haven't been and that been reached a conclusion where someone requests, send a peace offer, someone accepts because they know they're losing, yada yada yada.
Hold on.
Yep. What? Sorry. Continue.
It says only when the war sport hits -100, if Undri is forced to capitulate. But in all likelihood, the AI or someone else would likely capitulate if almost their entire country is occupied beforehand. So it's just the force to capitulate is the thing here. So I mean,
Yes, but it shows that the system really isn't very good if this could happen. Because if you have a system where you get force pieced out if you hold an inconsequential island, but you don't get force pieced out when half your country is occupied, including the mainland, it just seems like a really flawed system. And in
Well, I
addition to that,
wait. So would the AI would probably peace out for the island rather than capitulating?
I would assume
earlier.
so. They don't mention it here because they kind of use capitulate and peace out interchangeably, despite them making the definition at the start. So they're actually not really sure. But I would assume they say capitulate as in.
I think when you peace out during the war without any capitulations, that's just the negotiating peace, because it says there's two different ways: one capitulating, two negotiating peace. That's it.
Yeah.
So
That's
negotiating peace is what would probably happen all the time.
Yeah, I hope so because
well,
I just really hope that it doesn't turn into a modifier stacking game where you
Go on, RedKing.
get the minus.
It's
more
pretty clear the intention of this system is to emphasize war goals and how necessary they are to basically, to be able to actually win a war. And I think that's actually really useful in terms of just making sure A, the player sets reasonable war goals, and B, also just the fact that it gives the player something to focus on compared to rather than just having to siege the entire country down in order to get what they want.
I don't think that.
Wait, so let's say, right, how do you focus on a war goal in a big land war in Victoria 3 when you can't dictate where your troops even attack on a big front line?
Okay, actually, they did actually mention that the troops generals would favor going towards the war goal, just as an offhand comment.
Oh.
However, that also leads some weird extremes. Like, let's say you find the civil war, a war with Mexico, and you have Manifest Destiny as your war goal. Well, are they gonna focus on taking all those shitty lands that are invading the actual shit that matters?
Yeah, that's a good example.
It doesn't make sense, Doesn't. So, no matter which way you spin it, it's gonna be a lot of problems.
I'm trying to think of another example. I don't know.
I mean, it's just interesting to me because I actually have been toying around the idea as a host of creating a rule where as soon as someone hits, say, about 100 war exhaustion, the exact limit, they're also forced pieced out. And that's kind of the same idea of this here. This is just an experimental idea in my head to see what happens because, again,
a lot of hosts actually do have they have stalemate rules, right? That's what they call it, which is
Right.
kind of like this. If you occupy something, you hold it, then the host can declare stalemate, which means you get all the land you've occupied. If you winning the war and stuff. So
another big change.
they do have that kind of.
Another big change as well. No separate peace. Which is interesting.
Oh, actually, no. So they actually do have. So it's really kind of weird. So they say that if you're a minor nation, you're fighting a war, right? If you capitulate, they say that in the death response that it's technically a white peace because you're not losing anything if there's no war goals against you. So it's kind of a white peace. You can't separate peace up, but you can't. It's it gets into the gray territory, and I'll get into that later as well with the not be able to join a war.
Well,
It's
funny because
territory.
It's funny because I've also actually toyed around with the kind of idea of that is, I mean, obviously in a lot of Victoria 2 multiplayer games, there's sometimes rules where you can't separate piece out with someone, which is intentional because you're trying to reduce the amount of war score and make it harder for people to just conquer everything in one big war. But in any case, I've actually toyed around also with the idea that basically the whole idea of capitulation with that 100 war exhaustion thing, or
Yeah.
if you can like force people out by having them entirely siege down, you can force
Yeah.
someone to separate peace, and that's the only way you can separate peace someone.
Yeah. So, in my opinion, like I'm just gonna conclude real quick what I think. Right. So, my issue is that it takes away a lot of player agency in this case, and I would much rather have players make rules in MP about this kind of stuff, like nation ruining and piecing out and stuff, rather than there being a set mathematical algorithm that
Yeah.
determines when you allow when like the game decides when you win. Like you don't actually like decide it yourself. Like say, oh, I don't want to piece out because I think I have an advantage left. The game decides it's over. Like you lose, right? Because you have a -100 modifier stacking, which I really don't like that. Like
That only happened in Vic 2 with force piecing in certain situations, 100 war score, and
yeah,
war
pretty
leader.
pretty rare in Vic 2. Like in Vic 2, it pretty much only happened if you had one side who occupied a shit ton of land that could be taken, or if they somehow full occupy the war leader, or if they force occupy the entire side. That's basically the only scenarios where you can get forced peace down. That doesn't mean you shouldn't negotiate pieces though, and I do like that. I'll get into that as well. They have unilateral peace deals. You can actually both lose and take stuff in the same war, and I do like that. I really like that.
Yeah.
That was basically two, and it's really annoying when that happens.
Yeah, that is something I picked up on from this dev diary. So, for example, if the UK and Spain are fighting, the UK can take all of Spain's colonies, but Spain will take Gibraltar.
Yeah.
So you can get a mixed peace deal based on which side is occupying what, and that's a good thing.
It is a good
I think so
thing.
too. I
Yeah.
think so too. Yeah.
It's all caught up in these weird modifiers and mechanics, but it's a good principle to have in the game, which is a direct improvement on Victoria 2.
Yeah, it
Which
made
you can't say
negotiating
about it
transfers
much.
easier.
Well, who knows how transfers might work in this game?
One thing I do wonder though, how is the war support system going to work with that? Like, what's the point of doing a mixed piece if you know their war support is going to go to -100 before yours do? Like you can see the actual decrease. Like, it's not really
Now,
incentive to.
This is. I wanted to talk about this screenshot, which shows a direct example of war support. This one is Siam at -33.2%, and it shows every reason why. Wait, why does it say from exhaustion -133.2? Where's that coming from?
Oh, I think that's a total value they've lost. I think I'm assuming that. So like, I'm not.
Alright, so
I don't know.
it starts at 100.
So 'cause I think it starts at 150, right? Because I guess I don't know. It should start at 200, right? Let me look at the. No, it starts off at 100, and it goes down to -200. I don't know. They might have taken the numbers out of their ass because that doesn't make sense. But it doesn't make sense.
It's -100 where they're force pieced out.
Yeah. I
So-
suppose this is kind of an extreme example because you can see 75% of the land is occupied, right? According to it. So I suppose you could argue that's almost like a full occupation, yada yada yada. But like the thing is, you can just see that there's a base decay too, and as well as the radical population. So it feels like it's possible to hit that limit just with occupying one small ticker, and that's it, because of all the other factors that can also affect you. And I get that should punish you. Like, let's say your country's in revolt and you're fighting a war. That's what happened to Russia IRL. But it shouldn't be forced peace out by Germany because they got a modifier that said, "Oh, you lose to Ukraine now. I'm sorry," because they got -100 war support. It should peace out because their nation is falling apart. Like get out of the war. That's how I see it anyway. Nation.
Pierre,
Also, looking here at the specific.
No, go on.
I was looking here at the specific wording of it, and it says you can't just wait for war support to tick down by itself, because specifically it's this is because any country has a war goal targeting which isn't controlled by the end and still in the control of its own capital cannot have war support drop below 0.
Yeah.
So in order to get the -100, you have to have both their capital and the war goal, which is kind of reasonable to try and force someone out of a war if both their capital and everything that all the war goals that you're pressing are actually controlled.
I don't see the capital as being important because some nations has capitals right on the border, like Russia, for example, and St. Petersburg. So the capital thing is like only relevant for some countries.
I wanted to ask Pierre your thoughts on this, but I'm going to be right back for 2 seconds. So talk about this. I'll be right back. I wanted to get Pierre. Are you here, Pierre?
Yeah, I'm here.
Yeah. What about this war stuff? But I'll be right back.
But that's the point with the capital. I mean, that's how it is. It's supposed to simulate more like a real life, and if some nation's capital is taken, that's a pretty
What about
huge...
like Russia? They lose Moscow. Who gives a shit? You just like wait until they freeze themselves to death. You know, like it doesn't matter. You know, like this system just doesn't allow for all the complications and deaths that exist in an actual war.
Yeah,
you know,
but
like,
even
modifier.
okay, even if you lose, like, even like you lost Moscow, using your capital is still usually a massive deal, even if it doesn't like completely stop the war. And so, and that's the other point here is you also need to control your war goals as well.
I'm aware. I mentioned that earlier, and that is true. You do need to have at least one taker. I guess gonna call that taker because it's Victoria too, but you need at least one.
No, you need to control all your war goals.
All the takers, unless you drop them. They mentioned that. So
yeah, exactly. You can drop them.
Do it. But I don't like it because, like, if you get a thing occupied, like this system, it might represent like limited to colonial wars, right? Like you occupy a colony, they can't get it back, you win. Okay, fair enough. But what I don't think where it's gonna fail is like either gonna be in any kind of multiplayer scenario. First of all, it's gonna be a modifier game. Second of all, in any kind of world war, like imagine you're Russia, you're fighting World War One, you get absolutely fucking hammered. You know, like you can still win, probably because the Allies are kicking the shit out of you on the Western Front, for example. But you're just taking the heavy toll, right? You can choose to peace out. That's an option. You can choose to peace out willingly and say, okay, I'm just going to reduce my losses. But you can't do that because the game forces you to peace out because of the system.
I think
you can't have World War One type scenario in this system. I think it's not really.
Wars are going to be ending prematurely under the system before you're right. You wouldn't get a World War One situation because Russia would probably be long gone before you get even close.
Yeah. And the wars are prevented from escalating, and this is stuff that I think we learned before.
Yeah,
like you can't join a war in mid-war.
Yeah, that's from the Q&A. I guess I'll just mention it quickly. But basically, if a diplomatic player is already escalated into a war, then no one can join unless one side violates the other's sovereignty. That's like a new feature. So like you can violate sovereignty to go through a country that's not in the war. So unless you do that, no one else can join the war.
Oh well, that covers how Britain gets into World War One, I suppose.
It does, but it doesn't cover like Italy or Ottomans or like most of the other.
Unless those are separate wars.
Yeah, so someone actually mentioned this to me when I spoke in the Victory chat, is that you can actually launch diplomatic play to like disarm someone, and then if they back down, you get a separate war. But that just seems like a very gamey.
A gamey way of getting into a war because you can't. Yeah. Someone's not going to accept disarming when they're fighting a hellish world war.
It sounds like a very gamey way. It sounds like something that would happen. You know, in Victoria 2, right? You can have merged wars. It sounds exactly like that, but in single player. I don't know why they would copy that because it sounds so dumb to begin with. It sounds so...
I don't know. I think. Does anyone have any more interesting, insightful things to say about this Dev Diary number 26 peace deals?
Let me look, because I think there was one.
Perhaps some dev comments that are interesting.
So I swear there was one about war goals. I guess maybe not this one. Might be the other one or the Q&A. But I just remember one of the dev comments, one of them saying that you couldn't add any new war goals after the diplomatic phase have escalated into war. So that like it basically, as soon as the war begins, you can't add anything else.
Yeah, like, but I did pick up on that. I think.
Yeah.
Maybe even like whenever some dev data came out. But you can't change the scope of a war. It can't really escalate. You can't say it's gonna start off as a colonial war and then become a bigger war because the war will only ever be for that colony.
Yeah.
You cannot add war goals and upgrade what you want, even if you are that. You know that funny scenario said by Sigma 2157, whatever. If you declare a war for a colony and end up occupying all of the British Isles, you can still only take that colony. You can't do anything else. You can't take Scotland. You can't forcibly remove the government, change the government. You just can't do anything. Other than
I think that's kind of the point, is that you're supposed to do all that during the diplomatic plays. You have to plan out your war and actually what you want and see if your enemy is...
Because this means, like, if you want to take a colony, right? You have to then plan, If I get a huge victory in this war, I will take Southeast England. If I get a huge victory against that target, I will take Massachusetts. If this, if that. It can't just escalate whenever and however you want it to. You have
it's
to
not
plan it all
very
at the start.
dynamic and
Exactly.
natural,
That's why
yeah.
you gotta. That's the kind of the point is you gotta plan out which war goals you're actually gonna add and what you're gonna try and actually
You
go
know,
after, pretty much.
this
Like,
actually reminds me, like, this is almost as if you're playing Victoria 2, but you choose with every country after the war begins. Like, you can't join any war because you always choose block. Does that make sense? Because, like, you can't ever, like, join any... It's just so weird. Like, I can
yeah.
imagine there being a lot of frustration about that.
And I guess you can't add stuff. It's stuff you've already previously highlighted that you desire in a diplomatic play. Or maybe it's something like EU4 where you can highlight strategic regions you're interested in beforehand, something like that. And that's the only way you can take
I
stuff.
also don't...
I do think it's a good way of like
sorry.
trying. Yeah, sorry. I do think it's a good way of stopping like stupid stuff like well, I mean, especially this was the case in single player, less so in multiplayer because it's not defensible. But like, you know, it's a common thing to basically kneecap the UK in a single player game to just take that one like Northern England region.
Well, if the
Just-
AI is good enough, you shouldn't be able to invade them anyway. And you probably couldn't with this system because you can't actually control your armies, like, or navy, so you can't out-micro them, as they've said. But anyway, something I wanted to quickly get on is like this. What I worry about the most, right, is this kind of locked system where you can't join wars, you can't add war goals. It basically prevents a gradual escalation in any way. Like, let's assume we have World War One, historical World War One, right? How would this work on this system? Because Germany can't actually take Ukraine. They can't take Belarus. They can't take any of that unless they added day one in a diplomatic play. And if they do that, then, like, obviously in this system, every AI would go against them because there's so much land to demand. You know, like the idea with World War One is the war goals was kind of made up along the way when more and more people got into war.
Maybe you don't want to make it public what you want at the start of the war.
I was just thinking that, yeah.
Maybe you
I
don't want to
wonder
tell
if-
Russia that you're going to do Brest-Litovsk in 1914 if you win.
I wonder if there's going to be any difference for Great Wars here because
They actually
that
said
might
no.
be a.
Let me see if I can find the dev comment. They said that okay, if someone can find it, because I swear I read it somewhere. Let me see. But
I
basically,
trust you. I believe you.
they basically said that they were willing to sacrifice this bit of Great Wars so that diplomatic system could work. That's basically the gist of what they said. Is that they were willing, they were aware that there was a problem, that they couldn't actually replicate this kind of World War situation with gradual escalation, but they were willing to sort of put that aside for now. You know what I mean? And focus on the diplomatic system. That's basically what I got. Let me see if I can find it though. It's a very
We can come back to that later if you find it, but I'd like to move on now.
yeah.
We've covered. This is a bit of a doomerish dev diary, this one. But I want to take. Well, we'll have an interlude from the dev diaries because I want to talk about these screenshots. These are screenshots. These were located in that video, the monthly update video, right? I haven't actually watched it, must admit. But what we got from that was some screenshots of wars happening. So
yeah.
you've all got them on your screen. You can all look at my screen right now on the stream. This is I don't know when this came up in a video or what they were talking about, but we got this screenshot, right? And I don't know if this is an artistic mock-up or a work in progress thing. It looks like the same as that artistic mock-up of Texas in that the war dev diary itself. But I mean, look at this. This is war in Victoria 3.
Yeah.
This you can't even.
It doesn't do the system any favors that it looks like a mobile game. I will say. Like even if
I
it's
didn't-
just itself, it just doesn't make it look like just.
I thought the mobile game comments were harsh until I've seen the screenshot, and now I'm absolutely inclined to agree.
The
It's
mobile
still
game things is like a meme, but then it's come true when they release more details. Pierre, what were you saying something, Pierre?
It's still an alpha, well, even before that. Like,
Sorry, where is
it has
this?
time to develop. Like maybe they're just
You should
testing
maybe
it.
you should have to pull open my stream to see this. I haven't linked them in the chat or anything.
That's a good point.
Oh no, I've already done that.
Yeah, no,
Also-
like I was saying, like to preface it all, this is probably one of their artistic mock-ups, which is not actually from the game, but they made it in like Photoshop or something.
Perhaps.
Maybe this is just something they wanted to look like, but obviously improve it on it later.
I'm
Yeah.
guessing.
Also, another thing is, you notice how the province shapes aren't even visible in this mode. Like you'd think they'd be visible if it was an actual gameplay screenshot. So you're probably right. Like it's not actually a gameplay because like why wouldn't the province be visible when you? Because like they're for war maneuvering and they aren't even like visible in the war map mode or on the front lines or whatever. So yeah, you're probably right on that. Also, am I the only one noticing there is like encirclements, like surrounded areas? How's that gonna work
Yeah.
with the? How's that gonna work? You can't actually do encirclements yourself. It's just like randomized encirclements. It's
Yeah,
like
the
chance to get encircled. Like,
Your generals might do it. I don't know. Maybe
Might be
one of
something like
your general's traits might be high 4 player.
it might be something like how it happens in like Hoi 4, where like sometimes occasionally they like when you just use the front AI system, it will just occasionally encircle things by accident.
And this one is the more zoomed out one. And I found this one to be the most mobile game looking one. This one right here.
oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
It's,
that's
We
disgusting.
joke about it, but what if they did announce for like iOS and Android? It is
mean,
possible.
probably.
We wouldn't be
maybe.
surprised.
How
It
mean
does
would that
look
be?
a bit like
God
it.
damn.
Like, am I the only one who noticed that? You know, like the names of the major cities, like London. It looks like one of the newer Total War games. We have like a bar over the cities and stuff. I just
Yeah,
can't.
because like the city is the location where you control the whole state.
Yeah,
Total
I
War.
guess. So, yeah, I mean, I guess that's not too much to say. So it looks a mobile game and random encirclements. POG, I guess.
And this, you also see the gold stars next to the capital city names, which is just dumb. They're kind of dumbed down. Big gold star, yay, capital. Big city.
that really does give me the Total War vibes now.
That gives
me.
me the mobile
Yeah.
game
That
vibes.
too. Yeah, it's not. Eh. It doesn't. I mean, what can you say about it? It really does not lend any favors that it looks like a mobile game. Like you can argue that it looks good, but considering they simplified the war system, it really doesn't do them any favors. I think we can all agree that it looks like this.
Piechucker's put a good question in the chat, but look, there's also this one, which is no idea. Some green line going through here. What is that? What is this?
Wait, what green? Oh. Actually, so I'm not actually sure because that looks like wildly different. You know, it can't be the front line, but maybe it's like when you have the generals tab, right? Like you select your generals, you select which front they go to. So presumably there's two fronts here. There's the Western Afghanistan and the Kalat front. I would assume it's the southern one. I'm assuming that's what it is, but I don't know. Like I don't know.
Hey,
I don't know.
Zombie, is there like any way? Have you seen anything? Is there any way to like control which fronts are where?
Okay, so I actually know this. So this was actually in the earlier dev diary. I think we already covered it, but I'll just quickly go over this. The fronts are automatically generated on your
Okay.
borders, and they are basically, let's say, they're as long as the border with your other country goes. So let's say you have a front with Germany, right? So that entire front with Germany is going to span as long as your border with Germany is. You can't control how long it is. And then if your enemy is with Belgium too, then that's going to be a separate front because it's a separate country, right? That also means that the entire front with Germany, Russia would be all one front. And basically, it only splits when there's either a sea, like a sea tile between it, or there's a different country border between it. That's basically how it
That's
works.
what's going on here. So Persia is fighting Afghanistan and Kalat, and those are two different fronts for Persia.
Yeah, that's what I think that's happening. I assume as well.
One of them is just coming up as a question mark. This looks to me like it's from Persia's POV, but one of their fronts is a question mark.
I mean, that would have been like a really easy way to just like add a little bit of player expression. Would have been to allow you to at least control, like which like add your own fronts basically.
Well, that's what the people who are very much in favour of this war system are also saying. Well, you've got to give us some control. And Paradox are like, no, we're taking control. That's the whole point.
In a dev comment, they actually said in the last dev diary as well that they tried to experiment with this and apparently they failed. That apparently it would fuck up or something. I don't know. It's a weird thing because apparently if they're telling the truth, they tried it and it apparently didn't work. For some reason. I don't know. But
Yeah. All right. So we've seen these silly screenshots. We will now move on to the second final dev diary. Actually, we've still got flags, and then there's this one about technology. Big, important, huge subject for Victoria, the technology one.
Did we manage to get
And
anything
only got one
for
dip
the Vicky 3 premium currency?
Someone just suggested pounds, but I don't think that would work because it's a real currency.
Yeah, paradox points maybe.
what
I
about,
don't know. I was trying to think of something.
Paradox
funny,
points, yeah.
What about South African diamonds from the war
but-
colony?
Yeah, diamonds. Yeah, gems.
South Africa.
The only
Precious
micro left is
precious
microing your
metals.
credit card information into the into the game.
Precious metals, ducats.
Oh yeah, precious metals.
Quid.
Yeah.
All right, so the Victoria 3 technology system. There are 3 tech trees, as opposed to Victoria's 5 or
Yeah.
6, whatever. But that doesn't necessarily mean it's like actually simplified. But they've
I mean, they
mean-
kind of simplify it, but it doesn't really matter that much. And
I mean-
it's just the same. I just mean.
To be fair, in Vic 2, Navy and business are basically just extensions of Army and industry.
I mean, they do have a navy tree here, though. That's one of the 3, right? Don't they? Or
No.
no
oh, they don't. Right? Yeah, they have a military tree. I
Right,
forgot.
it's military.
military, society, and production.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think that's that much to say. Like, they simplified it a bit, but it seems like they still have the same things. Like, society is basically culture and commerce, like, kind of put together and stuff. So, it's
Yeah.
kind of the same, but, it's how it is.
So one of the big takeaway is you also get technology spread,
I'm too tired of people
which
talking
is
like
another
they
way
matter
you can get
when they don't have
technology
a
without
fleet.
necessarily actively researching it,
Diaries, bro.
which is a good thing,
Yeah.
I suppose.
Yeah.
It's right down at the bottom.
Yeah.
Starting
actually,
down at the bottom, really, but yeah.
Apparently, that is how most technologies in the game will end up being researched by you, is just by having them spread, but from other. Which I kind of do like about that fact, because I mean that's how it kind of works in real life. Is that technology spread throughout the entire world?
Well, I mean, to be fair, that spread is dictated by your literacy, so it still depends on how advanced you are. It's not like you're just getting free text for no reason, to be fair. So
Well,
it's
it's
not...
actually based on your innovation, I think. Is
No,
the
so
thing.
innovation.
Is literacy in a way. Well, literacy is one of the things that contributes
Literacy
to your
is your
innovation.
cap to innovation, basically.
So as I understand it, innovation is basically like research points in Vic 2. Like, you use those points to direct on a single research at a time, like in Vic 2. And then any excess into innovation that has gone unused, you then use to speed up your own tech spread. Right? That's how it works. So it's
Like,
basically
there was
research
something
points,
to that.
more or less.
And the thing is, the
okay.
cap is based on your literacy.
Yeah. Yeah, so the cap is based on literacy. Anything will, go into excess and then increase your tech spread. But let me see if I can find. But I do believe they do say that the higher literacy you have, the more technology spread you get. So actually, it's in the screenshot at the bottom. Yeah, so you can see the technology
Yeah.
spread. There's the base value, which is another thing you probably should get into. But then you can see there's literacy as well. So
Oh yeah, you're right.
if you have high literacy, you actually get more tech spread as well. So it's
Now,
just
one thing that I can't quite figure out from the dev diary, and I don't know if there's any dev responses on it, is whether or not it's like Stellaris, where you have 3 tech trees and you research one from each at the same time, so you're researching 3 things simultaneously, or if it's like Victoria 2, where it's one thing at a time from any tech tree.
I'm fairly certain it's like Victoria 2 for the innovation, like the one you actually select one. So you select one tech at a time, but then you get gain passive tech spread for other techs for one from each different school. You gain that passively, and then there's one tech you actively research. That's basically what I.
All right.
So
Yeah, it seems like that's what it'll be. Yeah.
So you kind of research several at a time, but you just can't control the other ones that you get tech spread from. You can only control the one that you manually, decide to research. But
I think innovation can be best compared to research points.
yeah,
Yeah.
basically.
And one of the things that contributes towards it is your literacy rate. But it seems like universities
Instead of-
contribute a lot towards this.
Universities
Well, it's
basically.
like the literacy rate is your cap, and then you
Yeah.
can use universities to get to your cap.
Supposedly, I think this was
Soft
actually in
cap.
one of the responses, is that universities are actually super expensive though, so you can't just spam them out and hope and get a massive advantage.
Well, you probably still can if that's what you want to put your money into.
Well, that's true, but
Yeah.
yeah, you're gonna fall behind in other things then.
Well, you don't
But
need an
you-
army.
Idea, anyways.
You don't need
Yeah.
an army or really a navy.
Universities, though, is basically like clergy from Vic 2, kind of. Except you instead of getting like a percentage thing you gotta get, it's just like the more you have, like by raw number, supposedly the more you get, right? And then
That's
kept
actually
by
the fun
like,
thing is there's actually a law on was it education access? But there's like one where it's like specifically faith-based. There's private and there's like public schooling.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
I remember
And-
those from way back.
that was in the institution's dev diary a while back, I think.
No, really, I think they expanded upon it here somewhere. I can't.
One thing that does make me wonder though, and it's like a quick thing, is just like it seems to me that the innovation that you generate, there's a base value, right, which everyone gets, and then there's basically a set amount from each university, right, a fully employed university. So that makes you wonder: does that make it so that big nations get a significant edge in research? If it's like not a percentage based like in Big Two, but it's actually like, like a set amount per university you have, because the base value seems pretty small. It's only 50 compared to one university give like 48, according to this screenshot. So, I mean, literacy is a cap, but you still increase your technology but to get more tech. So, well, I can't speak on it specifically, but I'm wondering if, maybe this would actually make lobbying or playing wide more effective because you get more like land for universities because they provide a base amount of research points or innovation points. I mean, like that's something that I was wondering about when I was reading this. Doesn't know.
I don't know.
I mean, it just kind of makes sense coming in from a realism perspective, in that most often the big advances in uh, industrial age did come from the bigger nations,
Yeah.
more populous ones that had actual proper education,
Mhm.
like
And
the
it's
U.S.,
strange.
the UK,
Yeah.
Germany.
Doesn't necessarily
France.
mean, because you still have small German and Italian states. It doesn't. I don't know. It's a bit strange.
Well, maybe maybe they would gain bonus tech spread because they're small. I don't know. Like they didn't say that at all, so who
Yeah.
knows about that? I do kind of like it though. Like I don't know how it's gonna work if like you have a base amount because that might be exploitable. If big nations get a lot more tech spread and innovation that smaller countries can, which shouldn't be possible that much. But like the idea of having tech spread and like
Right.
you research the technology, you have tech spread, and like the actual innovation points is kept by your literacy. I mean, it does seem a bit more interesting than Victoria 2's tech system. Victoria 2 was more or less you want to get your clergy, and right, you want to get clergy, your plurality, and that's pretty much about it. Then you want to get the obviously your culture tech and so on. But there wasn't like a huge amount of depth to it, and this does look like there's some potential to decide like if you want to invest heavily into universities and get a lot of research innovation points, then you can do it. Which in Victoria 2, it's kind of not really. Your nation would have been in a pretty sorry state if you can't afford to get clergy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Here we
so
actually
there are some
totally-
dev responses. We can go down and look. I mean,
Let me see. I mean,
maybe there's something interesting here.
there aren't that many. When I looked, anyway, it seemed that interesting. Like most of them are just
So there's
There
a lot of
was
stuff
one
about
I
education
saw that was-
access.
education access, because that was explained earlier. It's just the way that it calculates literacy, so not too interesting. Not too
There
much.
was one interesting one that I saw that like they specifically are balancing it. So like if you tried to like just go so far up in a tech tree, that like how do I say it? That like you just keep going down one specific path and hope that your tech spread gets every other technology. So like you just dive straight into like Era 5 and
Yeah.
go for one.
And
Oh yeah, yeah.
This
they
is
mentioned that.
something
can't
that we
just
didn't
do that.
mention, how they have eras of
Yeah.
technology. So like every like 20, 30 years there's a new era 1, 2, 3, 4. And that's a sort of limit on what technologies you can research at a certain time. I don't think you're actually mechanically prevented from researching stuff outside your era. It's more like Hearts of Iron 4's research. It's just a significant penalty.
This is
Right.
interesting.
That is
So
basically-
it seems that separate countries have their own unique technologies.
Yeah, that's some.
This is quite
That
interesting.
that was there. Was this on like? Because that's not on this dev diary, but there was one about China having a unique silk making technology.
I think was that a teaser? I think
I
that
think that was a
teaser.
teaser. They always do teasers that
Yeah.
aren't actually
No,
in the
I-
dev
I-
diary,
it's
so the
in-
teasers are
yeah, it's in
themselves
the-
unique.
I found it in the dev answers.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah.
Glad you found that, because that's an interesting point.
Oh yeah, I see it. Yeah.
There are some what's the flavor some technologies for individual countries and researchers that you have
They
that give
also
you certain
actually
benefits or not.
They also actually said in one of the responses too that with these flavor ones that like you're not locked off from like trying to make silk if you're not at China. It's just that having these technologies will let you produce things more efficiently than
More
anyone
of a
else.
bonus, more of a modifier for it.
Exactly.
A production method, some as it's called in this game.
Oh really? Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, they put that Chinese one here, I think. Yeah.
Yeah.
From the teaser, they handily put the image in the response, which is good, and that's the sericulture silk.
Mm.
Yeah, there you go.
I do wonder though, since you actually can research any tech, there's no like limit like year requirement like in Big 2. I wonder what kind of meta could come from that, like like rushing,
well, that's
rifling.
what I was saying. There's no year
Yeah.
hard limit.
Yeah.
You cannot research something until a certain year, but there is going to be a penalty for it.
I actually really like that. I think it could be interesting metas could come from that,
Yeah.
like rushing a certain tech and
Yeah.
getting a buff early.
But I wonder like what text it would be because I mean the whole thing with Victoria 2 was
Machine
basic-
guns.
Yes. There was like gas attack, machine guns, or like otherwise you wanted to get like the the philosophy tree and like as soon as possible.
And something in this game, you can't just research machine guns and get a bonus. You have to actually build the machine guns and
That's
arm
true.
your
Yeah.
army with it, which is kind of one of the good things about the game, I guess.
So you have to also, and that's also actually a good thing that really ties back with your economies. You have to actually improve your production as well, because that was always one thing with Victoria 2 is, I mean, like, you can kind of get away with, like, cheesing it and not actually, like, build that much of an industry to support your army, but it...
Well, I would disagree with that in MP at least. You absolutely need a more industry in MP. But,
Listen, Pierre, we're going to get to the flag soon, okay? Don't worry. Still here. We're going to get to that in a second, actually. I think we're wrapping up technology. We've got the idea of what the Victoria 3 system is. It's fine.
Yeah, looks pretty good, actually.
It's a nice... It's a change and a step up from
different,
Victoria 2.
but it's not like a bad difference. It's interesting, and especially with the text spread idea, it's something that's going to be...
You can see how Victoria 2's system is a bit limited. You can only research one thing at a time. That's kind of, like, saying that for X amount of months your country is only looking into this technology and nothing else. It's not advancing any other way other than getting this romanticism tech for 2 years.
I will say I might kind of miss the whole like invention system in Vic 2, where you do select the technology, but then have a bunch of inventions that have a random chance of happening. It just always added a little bit extra flavor and just like
some fun and that was a little quirk of Victoria. It wasn't really that great a feature, but
that's true. It wasn't. I'm not crying over it not being introduced, but it,
we're not crying about it.
Yeah.
So, are there any other interesting dev responses or anything interesting to say about technology?
No.
It says some countries will start with more techs, obviously. Obviously. Yeah, that's nothing special.
That's a lot, actually, if you think about it, because it says some nation starts with 36 techs. That's a lot more than they can start with in Vic 2, isn't it? Like Vic 2, they only start with like 5. The maximum is like 5.
There's like 100. There's supposedly like 175 of these technologies.
But there's no inventions, so there's more techs but no inventions.
Yeah.
Well, I think the techs in this case are supposed to be inventions. Like, if you look at like the screenshots, they're supposed to be like shaft mining, atmospheric engine, steelworking. Like, they're supposed to be inventions in this one.
I think they're actually from Victoria 2 techs and inventions are in this. Like the Bessemer process or something. That was an entire tech name in Victoria 2. I don't know. That's fine. I think we've covered this well.
Yep.
And I don't know. It's fine. It's good. I don't really have much issue with anything in the technology one.
Flag time.
Yes, right. Flag. Let's see if I can go get that.
Goddamn flags.
All time is flag.
Didn't actually have it open. Here we go. Am I actually on the page of it? Yeah, Dev Diary number 28 flags. This one came out today, an hour and a half ago. This is what I thought was going to be the least controversial Dev Diary. There isn't actually anything like much there isn't gameplay in this Dev Diary. This is just a cosmetic. How the game is going to look and feel with their flags. Flags are an important thing, and right at the start of the Dev Diary, they really get into the nuts and bolts of it. They start with, what is a flag? It's always a good place to start. So, Pierre, this is why I brought you here at the last minute.
Yes.
Tell us about your history in Victoria 2 modding flags.
Well, in Victoria 2, obviously, the flags had a lot of limitations, because of government type and stuff. But so what I did mostly in my mods is try to add more, more historically accurate flags and such. Flags that are more unique and stuff. And honestly, I gotta say, like, from reading this Dev Diary, they're basically doing my job, essentially, because this Dev Diary is actually probably just literally the best thing about the best Dev Diary in Victoria 3. Honestly, there's literally nothing bad about it.
Well, there was a mistake.
There was a mistake, but I don't really know what to. I'm guessing they're doing that because of censorship, maybe even. I'm not really sure, but.
Well, what is it? Which one is it?
Well,
the Soviet flag, right?
The Soviet flag, yeah. It's not a huge mistake, and most people won't even bloody notice. They did the same thing in Victoria too, but essentially, as far as I know, the flag they used for the Soviet flag here is from the Khrushchev era, so like 1955 and such. You can tell this by the sickle not being round enough. Whereas the flag they should be using is probably the Stalinist flag, which went all across. The sickle was a lot more.
So yeah,
a big deal.
Oh. Yeah, it's not a big deal. Well, it is a big deal. I think the game's unplayable, actually.
Yeah. Look, actually, there is a really interesting little bit here. There's also a sort of fallback system to provide flags for every polity if it can't really settle on one particular design. Or, if they're feisty, dynamic rebels. That, if they're actually considering implementing a dynamic rebel system where, like, certain states or whatnot can actually appear and, like, rebel from your country, that would be really cool.
Yeah, so let's go over what they've actually added, right? So, the big takeaway, the big change from Victoria 2 is your flag as your country can be dynamic. For example, the United States flag. This is impressive. It will change for your number of states you have, as it did in real life. So that's a good thing, right?
That makes me wonder, if you try to partition the US, will it go down like 1 or 2 stars when you have like 1 or 2 states left? That'd be pretty funny. Like, as you partition them, they keep losing stars. That'd be pretty funny. I like that.
I want to see. Well, why would you partition the USA in Victoria 3 when you don't have, there's no armies and all that?
I mean, because it's based, that's why.
Yeah, the second thing, I guess,
Obviously.
there's more than just a
Please,
set
I'm
of.
begging you.
There's more than just one set of political government type flags for a country. There's more things, more dynamic options that are based on more than just the government type. There's sort of lower reasons like the Scandinavia. Scandinavia will have a different flag whether or not Sweden or Denmark formed it, I believe, is what this is essentially saying.
Yeah.
More dynamic stuff, And also the first Dev Diary to contain code.
Yep. It's an interesting system. Well, I'm not really a flag coding expert, but as far as I can tell, it's basically they're not just using a PNG file and taking it from there. They're actually using different parts. Like you can see, like if you look at the code, it says like color 1 equals blue, and it has colored emblem, yada. So they're actually taking different parts of basically different cogs in the game, or how do you like different parts of a flag in the game, like different colors, tricolor, etc. And then you put them in a code, and then the game puts them together for you, basically, instead of using a PNG or a JPEG file, just like in Vic 2, for example. So that's interesting. I'm not sure how that work's gonna work though. Like modding wise, but it does seem like an interesting system because then you wouldn't theoretically you might not even need like a editing program to make it, like a paint or whatever. But
Well,
You
it's
said
actually the
cogs.
modding is down here
Cogs.
at the bottom of the flag dev diary, and
Oh, yeah.
it's actually like there's actually like it's kind of like Crusader Kings 3's coat of arms systems. Like there's a default background, and then you can add in like different like emblems or whatnot on top. And that's
Yeah.
actually how they make the French flag, where it's a blue background. They have two like rectangular pieces, one that's colored white and one's colored red.
yeah,
I
Put
tell
on
you
top.
what'd be cool is depending on how far they go with the dynamic system, is that the Filipino flag, they fly it upside down when you go to war with the red upwards. You guys know what I'm talking about? Just me?
I haven't heard of that.
Let's say the
It's
Filipino
interesting.
flag where it's blue on top normally and red on the bottom. I think it's like red's like blood of the land. I might be butchering this, but I do know that when they go to war, they fly it upside down, so the red is toward the sky.
When did they last go to war?
Probably World War II, I think.
They had their own flag at that point? Nice.
Yeah.
Unsure.
Well, yeah. Actually, the United States basically released them in like 1933, and they're actually on track in 46 to be completely independent. It's just World War II kind of screwed things up.
I thought Pierre was a flag man. I thought I had backup on that. I went in-
I wouldn't be surprised. Like a lot of flags, yeah, a lot of countries like have different flags for wartime. So I wouldn't be surprised. But I didn't actually know that. I didn't know that for Philippines.
Oh, yeah. Well,
yeah. And it seems like you can also actually script conditions for when a flag appears, as they explain. So in Victoria 2, Pierre can explain, but you can only do with governments, right? And a few other things, like conditionality. Yeah. But
pretty much. Yeah.
yeah, in this here you can seemingly do it with everything that is scriptable. So you can use like how many states you own, if you're at war, like all this usual conditions you can use in any Victoria 2 event and stuff like that, right? You can use that with flags too, which is pretty cool. Probably pretty interesting. GFM, HFM flag or something, I guess.
Yeah, they just need
Or
to
the
take
story.
the amount of flexibility and dynamic stuff an agency they have in flags and can put it to other aspects of the game as well.
Yeah, I would
I mean,
agree with that.
actually, particularly modability. They need to make other things as moddable.
Yeah,
so
they,
that people can
That's
mod
true.
a good multiplayer experience out of this game. Hopefully.
yeah.
I wonder how extensible the modding system is, because if it is moddable enough to the point where you can actually like basically read added micro, then
I
know
don't
if it'll
know.
be that,
I-
but they have consistently said that they will be focusing on making it very moddable from the start. So,
or at least add in more like elements of player agency directly to the army, like different and that.
I like. So I do agree that because the dynamic system is better, and the more moddable the game is, the better. But I don't, in my experience with Paradox modding, I don't think it's gonna be possible to mod in like regular units. Unfortunately, I think the most you can do is like you can probably mod out war support. You can mod out like probably some part of diplomatic plays. I don't know if you can mod out so it can join wars. I guess you can just merge wars, I guess, with diplomatic plays. I suppose, like in Vic 2, but yeah, that's some things you can fix, some things you can't. Is how it is. But I mean, it's more moddable the better, of course.
I mean, that's just like Victoria 2, like mod, like and most Paradox games modding. You're not actually like changing the game. You're just literally editing the game. There's a difference.
I mean, some of the newer versions does have a bit more flexibility, but generally, yeah, that's like, you can't change like the core stuff. You can't make up a new mechanic, brand new mechanic, unless it's based on an existing mechanic, for example.
that's it. Flags, we can't spend too much time on that. We've done it. Good stuff. That's a good dev diary. The only non-controversial one.
Yep.
If they
There's
do
Well,
only
actually,
one
technology
last.
too. Technology was pretty positive as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. Was there anything else, RedKing, you're saying?
Oh yeah, I was just saying, just adding on to the modability thing, that if like this game is super moddable to the point, like imagine the kind of things that could come from it, like the whole. You guys know about like the New Order mod for Hearts of Iron 4?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Originally, that he wanted to actually build in Victoria 2, but like Victoria 2 modding is just so esoteric that he wasn't able to.
I have noticed, yeah, Hoi 4 modding is actually quite extensive. You can do a lot to that game.
Yeah, they really
Do a
extend
lot.
the usability.
Yeah, hopefully if that continues into Victoria 3, we'll get some like really interesting stuff going.
I think for CK3, another recent release, there are big project mods, but nothing's really come out yet, right? Because there's such huge projects that they take a lot of time. Am I right on that? Because that game has modding potential for, like, you know, the big overhaul mods to give us like the Lord of the Rings world and all this stuff. Different.
There actually has
but...
been some really interesting, like, smaller ones. Like, there was this one really interesting one that was based on, like, the mythology of Ireland. Basically made Ireland an entirely huge thing. A bunch of, like, tiny little counties.
Yeah, like the
really fun.
Europa Universalis Voltaire's Nightmare thing. In the Holy Roman
Something like
Empire.
that, yeah, but with Ireland.
Cromwell's Nightmare. I don't know. Right, so the last thing we want to briefly go over was a huge Q&A they did. Someone has helpfully posted the full Q&A transcript on the website here. There was only a couple of ones we wanted to focus in on, though. Right? Some questions and answers.
I posted it to our chat, if you can see that, but the transcript of it anyway. And I would say there's only really like 2.
I have it on the screen.
Yeah, okay. There's only really like 2 questions I think are that interesting, and we already kind of covered one of them. Like the first one was the one that let's see. That was the one where you couldn't join a war. I mean, we already covered that, right? You can't join an active war. It's kind of shitty. It is how it is, right? You can't join a war. Just it sucks. But yeah, the other one was they actually had a question specific to multiplayer, and it's not that in depth, so I don't think we should spend too much time on it. But it is interesting.
I Control F multiplayer. There's another 2 questions that cover this as well, but
that one's funny.
This one.
Yeah, that one's really funny. The answer.
Yeah, so there's a lot of them, but I think that's the only like one that is interesting. But let me find it.
The player will have to utilize different talents in multiplayer, such as people skills. We're fucked, boys. It's over.
The reason why I think this is funny and important to note is because in Victoria 2 you need to do this as well. So it just seemed like they actually have 2 questions, but 2 or 3 questions about multiplayer, right? And they still don't seem to grasp that you also need diplomacy in like EU4 and Vic 2. Like it's just kind of weird how they.
If anything, you need it less in Victoria 3 because there's so many more mechanics that are taking decisions and agency away from the player.
Yeah.
They already need a lot of diplomacy in Victoria 2. And you need to know some people's skills.
Yeah, I think, and they also mentioned that diplomatic plays would be good for multiplayer, and I just can't see it. Like, if I'm gonna be honest, like with what we discussed earlier, with not being able to join an active war, not being able to add any more war goals aside from the initial ones, it just seems like.
Well, that's the thing. Like all the negotiation is just shunted to the diplomatic phase, so basically you're just gonna have people yelling at each other.
Yeah, exactly. So, everyone's gonna be yelling at each other until they get mechanically locked out of the war.
Isn't that you just criticised it essentially, the RedKing, though? Weren't you in favour of the diplomatic system?
Oh yeah, I am. I'm mostly just kind of joking about the yelling bit.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's all shunted to the beginning, and I mean, like that, you're still gonna have some intense diplomatic negotiation going on, for sure.
Yeah, my problem with it though, and the thing I don't understand with their answers is that if you're using a system like diplomatic plays, right, that's inherently like a lot less free-flowing diplomacy than just using like a diplomatic system without any mechanical locks. So not like a mechanical lock would be like getting locked out of joining a war or getting locked out of doing anything else because of something mechanical. Which is basically what diplomatic plays are, as well as I see it. So I just don't see how, at least in multiplayer, how diplomatic plays will be better. Because in Victoria 2 and other Paris games, you're actually pretty free, like diplomatically. You can join any war you want. You can negotiate for anything you want through transfers. You can do a lot of different things with diplomacy.
You can negotiate and change the war mid-war.
Yeah, you can do all these things. But in diplomatic plays, the only real negotiating you can do is say, okay, I have this war goal. Either accept it or we're gonna go to war. That can't be escalated and no one else can join. Like that's really all you can really do with, as I see it, like the diplomatic plays in multiplayer, because like everything is like mechanically locked. Like whereas in Vic 2, it's not mechanically locked and the diplomacy is more free flowing.
Well, this next question says diplomatic plays with human opponents will be fun.
Yeah, well, that's kind of what I was on to.
Okay, I guess they will be fun then. They said so. The developers of the game said so.
Yeah, I just don't get it. Like, unless someone can provide maybe some counter arguments, I just don't really see the how they think that. What we've talked about. a multiplayer perspective. I just don't.
Right, I think that is us coming to the end of the discussion today. There's a lot more in this Q&A, but damn, that's a lot to go over. Too much.
Yeah.
And we've got the most multiplayer relevant and interesting parts out of it. Zombie, you read the whole thing, right? You did.
I did, yeah.
Yes, and I trust Zombie to take the most interesting parts out.
Yeah, and it was really quite sad to read actually, because like just that question alone on the you couldn't join wars kind of made me a bit sad. So I might have missed a few other ones, but from what I remember, is that like all the shit we already kind of know. It's just like general concept, like is military important, or is politics important? I mean, just stuff like that. Like those were the interesting questions that they actually answered, right? So that's the interesting ones. I don't think the other ones really worth going that deep into anything else.
So that's about it. That's good. We've covered all the dev diaries that came out over the past month. Wait, one last thing. Just want to see which one they've got next week. Or, the dev diaries are taking a break over the holidays. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we don't know what they're going to do when they come back. Alright, that's fine. We'll just, we'll come back, we'll see what they release, and then we'll do another one eventually. In a month or two.
It might be maybe revolutions or something. Is this a new concept? So.
Rebels. There's stuff to look forward to.
Right.
Yeah.
So, thank you, my special guests, for another riveting discussion.
Yep.
I'm not being sarcastic. No, I'm not. I'm actually not. I always do sound like I am sometimes, but I'm not. Alright, whatever.
That's just the Scottish accent.
I'm not the best at this. I'm not the best at this, But I'm the only one who's fucking stepping up and doing this for you, for the community, for Victoria 2 and Victoria 3.
Yeah, I actually really do hope that more of these discussions make because like the first one actually made their way into the Paradox forums, and I think it actually did have some kind of effect on like the devs and stuff. So I do hope more of these actually get there, so they actually see the criticisms. Because I feel like a lot of the time it's convenient to ignore, because so a lot of the people that criticize the stuff come from I guess what the devs see as like a toxic camp of Victoria 2 players, but I don't think we're really that toxic. So if actual constructive criticism could come to them.
Yeah, I can't deny a lot of the criticism that from the Victoria 3 developers and the Discord point of view, it probably looks like there's all these weird edgy people coming out of the Victoria 2 multiplayer scene into our Discord being toxic and getting banned. It looks bad for us from that point of view, but hopefully this stream is like the reasonable. Obviously, our stream is completely reasonable. The reasonable face of the criticism that I hope they look at, and none of this is. I don't want to be hostile to them at all. To any of this, just giving our honest takes.
Yeah, I just hope, as you say, you'll at least this criticism, this constructive, level-headed criticism will make its way. Hopefully, can change some stuff, or at least influence how they.
I mean, we don't. They probably they've gone down a direction that we generally don't agree with. They're probably not going to change it, but we're just going to keep saying it.
Yeah.
Because
either way, as a developer myself, feedback is one of the most important things you can receive on any kind of your projects, especially by the people who are going to use it.
Oh yeah, 100%.
So.
Even within the direction, there's still a lot of things they could improve. Like even if you have this warfare system, right? You can still do things better, like giving more options for what you use to attack and so on. So I think even if they go down this direction, there's still a lot of good feedback they could use to make it not as bad. Does that make sense? Like kind of reduce the potential damage it could cause for the game.
Again, just like some minor little things to add more player expression directly into the system would be, a great way towards, I'm sure, assuaging the, fears of the Victoria 2 multiplayer community.
Right, we'll see. So our discussions will be back after maybe one or two more dev diaries next year in 2022. Maybe the year that Victoria 3 gets released. Probably will be, actually. Yeah, so thank you, Pierre, for your flag inputs and everything else, and RedKing and Zombie, once again.
Happy to be
here. No problem.
Have a good Christmas and everything, and
Merry Christmas,
New Year.
You
and
too.
all that.
Merry Christmas.
Oh yeah, you too, man. Merry Christmas. And a
Happy
good
New
Year.
Year's.
So Piechucker and I will stay around and do our. Again, there aren't really any questions coming through on any of the messages, but I want to talk to Piechucker a little bit.
All right. What are we talking about?
Boot the other three out, Piechucker. Now, get them out of here.
Cheers. Thank you.
Cheers, man. See ya.
See ya.
Thanks, guys. well, there aren't any questions. This is the segment I normally want where we go over any donation questions. But I want to talk to you about my idea of playing Project Zomboid.
Yep. No, I had a look into this game.
What do you think?
I think it looks very interesting. I was really into fuck, what's the name of the game? H1Z1. Did you ever play that?
Yeah, I played the Battle Royale bit at least.
Yeah, I played the Battle Royale and I played the survival bit as well, and that was a ton of fun. So now I'd be super keen to jump into that.
Yeah, so I've had a couple of ideas. Like lately, I've been watching some Zomboid stuff. I've seen Tommy K doing great streams on it, and there's some YouTube stuff from this YouTuber called Nurse, not Nurse Reno, just Nurse. I mean, that game, I've played it a little bit in the past. They've done some really good updates on it lately. I want to play it. And I was thinking either we could, just me and you play it, or we can open up the server to more of the community, or have more of a
How about
server.
you and I get really fucking good at the game, and then we open it up to the
Yeah,
to the community.
so we can do like a co-op one, a private little co-op world to learn the game, and we can also have a community server later on.
I think that's a great idea.
Something like that would be so good.
Yeah, people seem excited for it. Look at chat. People.
Yeah, loads of people like this idea. I like the. We'll do it. I don't know about that, Cabra. CK3 is another thing. Next year they're doing a DLC for CK3. At that point, I think we should do another campaign.
Yeah.
And maybe I'll do the Shovel Face Part 3 as well.
Oh, I hope so. Because I don't know if I really exist in the Spud Gun universe. I think that's my way in.
I know, because there's some absolutely amazing stuff in that CK3 campaign that's still waiting. I know you've been itching for that big war stuff.
Absolutely.
But it'll come out eventually. Right, so quickly, Jeff, Piechucker for raiding me with one viewer, and Hobokins for the subs. And thank you, Piechucker, for being here for another stream. Good to have you back. We'll organise this Zomboid stuff.
Absolutely, I'm keen as. I'll pick it up. I'll actually even buy it today and I'll have a look. That's awesome.
Alright.
I'm going to plug some stuff if that's alright.
Go ahead, plug everything.
Alright. Follow my Twitch. I don't really stream, but who knows? Maybe one day. Follow my Discord. Join my Discord rather. You can find it in the Spud Discord. What else do I do? Subscribe to my YouTube channel. I don't make videos, but I don't know. It's a pretty exclusive club to join.
What do you lose from just subscribing and following him on Twitch? He's not going to notify you of any streams or videos. You're not even going to notice.
I'm not going to annoy you.
What do you lose?
Yeah, what have you got to lose? All right, well, that's wonderful. Thank you, Spud. I appreciate that, man. Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas, chat.
Merry Christmas
Thank you,
to
guys.
you too,
Thank
and
you.
the chat. Thank you very much. See you later.
All right. Take care, buddy. Bye-bye.
And goodbye, chat. That was another good discussion. Plenty interesting stuff in the Victoria 3 covered. I want to do this Zomboid stuff because the Zomboid train, there's quite a lot of hype and loads of content creators doing it. That'll be something interesting. Right, Piechucker's linking his Twitch in there. So, I'll see you on Saturday, guys. Friday there's a video. Saturday, the Spud Gunner multiplayer stream. I'm doing the Terrania. That'll be session 5. There's a community post announcement today on my YouTube. I pointed out part 6 of the Airstack Britannia series was copyrighted down. I'm going to figure out how to sort that out. Something and re-upload it. You can see that on the community post. Alright. Thank you, guys. Goodbye.